It happened in broad daylight. A gang of men thought they could hit a hungry little girl and no one would care. They were wrong. Dead wrong. The sun was merciless that afternoon, baking the asphalt in front of Jimmy's roadside diner until it shimmered like glass. The air smelled of motor oil and bacon grease, and somewhere behind the diner, a radio played an old country tune barely audible over the low hum of idling engines. 100 motorcycles stood gleaming in the midday light, chrome beasts lined up in perfect formation. Their riders, members of the Iron Saints Motorcycle Club, were taking a short break on their cross-state veterans charity ride. For most of them, it was the one ride each year that wasn't about speed, or power, or freedom. It was about memory, about brothers they'd lost in uniform and brothers they'd lost on the road. Jack Rourke, the club's president, sat on his Harley at the edge of the row. The man was built like the machines he loved, heavy, solid, unyielding. His face carried the kind of calm you only earn after years of violence. Not peace exactly, but control. He took a drag from his cigarette, his sharp eyes scanning the road out of habit. 5 more miles to the monument, said Bear, his second in command. A towering man with a beard streaked gray, Bear was the kind of presence that filled any room or parking lot. Jack nodded, flicking his cigarette aside. "We'll roll soon," he said, but his tone wasn't sure. Something about the air felt wrong. And then he saw her. A small girl, thin, dark-skinned, barefoot, crossed the diner's lot. Her hair was tangled into uneven braids, and she clutched a torn backpack like it was treasure. The name stitched into it, faded and half-torn, read Brown. She stopped at the edge of the sidewalk and peered into the trash can by the diner's entrance. Her lips moved silently, whispering to herself in a soft Jamaican accent. Just a lickle bread, just some food. Across the street, 4 men leaned against a pickup truck, passing a beer between them. Troy Daniels, 30 years old, tall, and sunburned, stood out as their leader. Tattoos covered his forearms, the kind that weren't earned in service but inked in arrogance. His gang called themselves the Red Vultures, and they'd earned their name, always circling the weak. Troy watched the girl for a few seconds, grinning as cruelty formed in his mind. "Hey," he called out. "You lost, sweetheart? Ain't no handouts here." The girl froze. Her voice shook. "Please, sir, I'm just hungry." He laughed, a dry, sharp sound. "You hear that, boys? She's hungry." He snatched the backpack from her hands, shaking it upside down. A few coins and a crumpled photo fell onto the dirt. "Give that back," she cried, lunging for it. He caught her wrist, twisting until she gasped. "You don't tell me what to do, little." The slap came sudden and brutal. It cracked through the air like a gunshot. For a moment, everything stopped. Even the radio behind the diner seemed to choke on silence. Jack was on his feet before he realized he'd moved. His voice came low, calm, and deadly. "Mount up." Engines flared to life one after another, the thunder rolling across Main Street until the windows of the diner rattled in their frames. The ground trembled beneath the synchronized roar of 100 machines. The Red Vultures turned toward the sound, their mockery dying in their throats. The Iron Saints were moving, slowly, deliberately, across the street, their formation tight, their faces grim. People inside the diner pressed their faces to the glass as the world outside turned into a scene from a movie, sunlight flashing on chrome, the deep growl of engines filling the air, and the look of pure shock on 4 men who realized they had made the worst mistake of their lives. Jack's Harley stopped inches from Troy's boots. The engine idled low, vibrating with restrained fury. He swung his leg over and dismounted, walking past the gang without a word. He knelt beside the girl, who was now on her knees, clutching her cheek, tears mixing with dust. "Hey, kid," he said softly. "You all right?" She nodded once, barely. Her eyes flicked toward the truck. They took my bag. It had my mummy's picture. Jack rose slowly, turning his gaze toward Troy. His expression didn't change, but the air around him felt heavier. Which one of you took her bag? Troy smirked. She's just some stray. Didn't think it mattered. Jack stepped forward until they were face to face. Everything matters, he said. Bear moved behind him, his arms crossed, watching the other 3 thugs fidget. The rest of the bikers had formed a half circle, blocking every escape route. Their engines kept running, low, rumbling live. Look, Troy said, trying to sound brave. We didn't mean anything by it. Jack's voice dropped, quiet enough that everyone had to strain to hear it. You know what happens when you hit a child in front of men who've seen war? No one answered. You find out real fast that not all monsters wear masks. The tension broke like glass. Troy's crew stumbled backward toward their truck. One of them, thin, with a snake tattoo coiling around his neck, hesitated. His eyes flicked to the girl, and something strange passed across his face. Fear. Recognition. Jack noticed. He didn't understand it yet, but he knew it mattered. Let them go, he told Bear quietly. We've got their plates. They're not getting far. The truck roared to life and peeled out, spraying gravel as it vanished down the highway. Jack watched until the dust settled, then turned back to the girl. Come on, he said. You're safe now. Bear handed her a water bottle and a sandwich from the diner. She held them with trembling hands, mumbling, "Thank you," between tiny bites. Name's Jack, he told her. What's yours? She swallowed hard. Ariel, she said softly. Ariel Brown. Jack froze for half a heartbeat. He didn't know why that name scraped at something buried deep in his memory, but it did. He nodded slowly. All right, Ariel. Let's get you inside. As they walked back toward the diner, Bear leaned in close. You think those guys'll be back? Jack's eyes were still on the horizon where the truck had disappeared. Yeah, he said. And when they come, we'll be waiting. The engines quieted one by one until the lot fell into uneasy stillness. But the echo of that slap, the one that started it all, hung in the heat like a storm warning. Welcome to Tales of an Observer, where truth, dignity, and courage meet in the stories we can't afford to forget. Now, before we get deep into the story, I'd love to ask a small favor from you. Please hit that subscribe button, like this video, and drop a comment telling me which city you're watching from around the world. And don't forget, share this story with your loved ones. Now, let's get back into the story and see what unfolds. Inside the diner, Ariel sat quietly at the counter, a plate of fries in front of her and 1,000 miles of fear behind her eyes. The smell of coffee, grease, and diesel filled the air. Conversations that had stopped when the slap was heard were slowly starting again, though voices stayed low, careful. People kept glancing at the girl, not out of cruelty, but the kind of quiet curiosity that comes when the world shows you something you can't easily explain. Jack Rourke leaned against the wall near the window, arms crossed, his reflection caught in the glass beside the glare of the afternoon sun. His thoughts spun faster than his Harley's engine. He didn't believe in coincidences, not since his brother's death. And something told him that little girl's name, Ariel Brown, was about to drag him back into the kind of darkness he'd spent years trying to outrun. You eat, Bear said gently, his gruff voice low. He slid a milkshake toward her, extra whipped cream piled on top. The big man's size made his gentleness almost absurd, a lion offering comfort to a sparrow. Ariel stared at the plate like it was a trap. Then, slowly, she picked up one fry, dipped it into the ketchup, and took a bite. The sound of her chewing was almost inaudible, but Jack noticed the tremble in her hands. How long since you had a meal? Bear asked. She shrugged, still chewing. 2 days. Maybe 3. Jack exchanged a look with Bear. He knew that kind of hunger, the kind that didn't just gnaw at your stomach, but at your dignity. Jack moved closer, his voice even. Ariel, you said your bag had a picture of your mother. She nodded, her fingers tightening around the glass of milkshake. It's gone now. They took it. Tell me about her, Jack said. The girl hesitated. For a moment she looked like she might cry again. Then she straightened a little, her voice barely above a whisper. Her name's Kendra Brown. She's a nurse. We came here from Jamaica last year. She said it was for a new job. But Ariel's voice trailed off. She started acting scared. She'd make phone calls when she thought I was asleep. Said she was talking to someone who could help her stop bad men. Jack's eyes narrowed. Bad men? She nodded. She said they hurt girls. That they pretend to help people, but they lie. She said she found something at work. Some papers. Bear leaned forward on his elbows. Where's your mama now, kid? Ariel's answer hit like a cold wind. She's gone. The silence that followed was heavy. Gone how? Jack asked. One night she told me to pack a small bag. She said if something happened, I had to run and find someone called Rourke. Ariel looked up, meeting his eyes for the first time. That's you, right? Jack froze. His cigarette burned down between his fingers before he noticed. Your mother said my name? Ariel nodded. She said you'd know what to do. The name Kendra Brown stirred a memory Jack hadn't wanted to revisit. His late brother, Ethan Rourke, had been a journalist, stubborn, reckless, and brave enough to go where police and politicians were afraid to look. 2 years ago, Ethan had been found dead in his car outside of Lincoln County, an apparent accident, though Jack never believed that story. Before his death, Ethan had been investigating a trafficking network tied to law enforcement and local businessmen. The files the feds recovered from his laptop were incomplete, but one name had stuck in Jack's mind ever since. Kendra Brown, a nurse who'd gone missing 3 months after their last contact. Now her daughter was sitting in front of him, barefoot and shaking, in the middle of nowhere. Coincidence? Not a damn chance. A waitress came over, nervous but kind. Another milkshake for the girl? She asked. Ariel nodded timidly, and Jack slipped a 20 onto the counter. The woman smiled and hurried off, glad to have something to do that didn't involve staring at the biker with the storm in his eyes. Bear broke the silence first. Boss, you're thinkin' what I'm thinkin', ain't ya? Jack didn't answer right away. He watched Ariel wipe ketchup from her fingers with a napkin too big for her hands. Finally, he said, she said her mom called me before she disappeared. That means Kendra knew she was in trouble. And if Troy Daniels and his boys had that girl's bag, they're connected somehow. Bear frowned. That crew's bad news, Jack. Real bad. But this ain't our fight. Jack turned, his expression flat, voice low. It is now. Bear sighed, running a hand down his beard. Knew you'd say that. Through the diner window, the parking lot shimmered in the heat. The other bikers were scattered outside, leaning on their bikes, restless. They knew when their president was thinking too long about something, it never ended with just talk. The bell above the diner door jingled. The room stiffened. Sheriff Clay Moran walked in. Tan uniform, mirrored shades, and a badge that gleamed like it had something to prove. He carried himself like a man used to being feared. Afternoon, Moran said, his tone casual but loaded. His gaze lingered on the Iron Saints patch on Jack's vest. Heard there was some trouble across the street. Jack didn't move. If you call a grown man hitting a child trouble, then yeah, you could say that. The sheriff's lips twitched into a smirk. Word is, you and your boys scared those fellas half to death. Jack's eyes narrowed. You here to thank me or threaten me? Neither, Moran said, sliding his sunglasses off. I just came to tell you that Troy Daniels and his men won't be facing any charges. Witnesses say the girl started it. Bear barked a laugh that was anything but amused. You kiddin' me? Morin's smile didn't reach his eyes. That's the report. You know how it goes. Word against word. He leaned closer, voice dropping. Best advice, Rourke? Right on. Don't stir up dust you can't breathe through. Jack's jaw tightened. And if that dust hides something filthy, Sheriff? Morin's grin hardened. Then maybe it's best for everyone if it stays buried. He tipped his hat to Ariel on his way out, an act that somehow made the moment worse, and walked back into the sunlight. For a few seconds, nobody spoke. Then Bear muttered, You believe that? They're covering for Troy. Jack nodded slowly. Yeah. And the sheriff just told us where to start digging. He turned to Ariel. When your mother told you to run, did she give you anything? Something to protect? A key, maybe? Ariel hesitated. She gave me a little silver thing. She said never lose it. It had her work badge and a USB on it. That was in my bag. The one Troy took, Jack said. Ariel nodded, eyes brimming. I told him to give it back. He laughed. Jack rested a hand gently on her shoulder. We'll get it. Promise, she whispered. He looked her in the eye, and for a moment, she saw the soldier behind the scars. Not the biker, not the fighter, but the man who'd carried too many ghosts and still stood. I don't make promises easy, he said. But this one's good. Outside, the Iron Saints had gathered near their bikes. Bear stepped onto the porch and nodded to them. Looks like we're not done here, boys. The men looked up, silent, waiting for orders. Jack joined him, his expression all business. We're looking for a red Ford pickup, plates from Madison County. Belongs to Troy Daniels of the Red Vultures. I want it found. One of the bikers, Razor, the club's tracker, cracked his knuckles. What do we do when we find it? Jack's gaze drifted toward the road where the sheriff's cruiser had disappeared. We asked questions the sheriff didn't. The men nodded and began to move, engines growling one by one, the air thick with the scent of gasoline and resolve. Inside the diner, Ariel pressed her face against the window, watching the bikers mount up. She didn't know who these men really were, but for the first time in months, she felt something she hadn't felt since her mother vanished. Safety. Jack put on his sunglasses, pausing by the door. Stay here with Bear, he told her. You'll be safe. I'll be back before sundown. She nodded, clutching her milkshake like it was a lifeline. As he stepped outside, the sunlight hit his face, turning his expression into something carved from stone. Bear called after him. You sure about this, boss? Jack swung his leg over his Harley, the engine roaring to life. Not one bit, he said. But I'm sure about her. He twisted the throttle, and the bike leapt forward, tires spitting dust as the Iron Saints rolled out behind him. The wind whipped against his face, hot and dry. Somewhere ahead, the road curved toward answers, and a war he hadn't planned to fight. But Jack Rourke had learned something long ago. When a man's past starts knocking, you don't hide. You ride to meet it. The sun was sinking by the time the Iron Saints rolled back into Ravenbrook, the kind of town where hope had moved out years ago but the shadows never left. Rusted signs leaned over cracked sidewalks, and the same tired faces loitered outside bars and pawnshops, pretending not to see the things that happened in daylight. Jack Rourke led the convoy through the narrow streets, the growl of 100 bikes drawing wary stares. Every throttle, every echo off the brick walls reminded him of why they were here. Justice wasn't something you waited for. You rode for it. They pulled into the gravel lot of the Rusty Anchor, a biker-friendly bar that smelled of oil, whiskey, and bad decisions. It was neutral ground, sort of. If anyone in Ravenbrook knew where Troy Daniels and his crew were hiding, it would be someone in this place. Jack swung off his Harley and adjusted his leather vest. The patch across the back, Iron Saints MC, caught the fading light like a warning flare. Bear grunted beside him. "Bar looks quiet," he said. Jack's reply came dry, "Too quiet." Inside, the air was thick with smoke and country music leaking from a busted jukebox. A few regulars sat at the bar, heads down, pretending not to notice the sudden influx of leather and muscle. Jack motioned for his men to spread out. Cole, Reaper, Jensen, his sergeant-at-arms, fell in beside him. Reaper's face was hard, unreadable, the kind of man you could trust in a fight but not always in silence. Jack headed straight for the bartender, a wiry man with gray hair and a cigarette dangling from his lip. "We're looking for Troy Daniels," Jack said. "Red Ford pickup. For men, loud mouths, cheaper tattoos." The bartender shrugged. "Lot of trucks come through. You'll have to be more specific." Reaper leaned on the counter, his voice lower. "Maybe this'll help you remember." He slid a 50 across the wood. The bartender took the bill and tucked it away without looking up. "Yeah, I might have seen that bunch. They were in here 2 nights ago. Caused trouble. Said they were staying near the old Eastfield depot out by the industrial park." Jack's expression didn't change, but his gut tightened. "You sure?" The bartender nodded. "Ain't no one else dumb enough to hole up there. Place has been shut down for years." Jack dropped another 20. "If they come back, you didn't see us." "Didn't see nothing," the bartender said. Outside, the Saints regrouped near their bikes. The sun had dipped low, casting long orange shadows across the lot. "Depot, huh?" Bear said. "Figures. Perfect place for rats to hide." Reaper wiped sweat from his brow. "Boss, we should tread lightly. If Troy's tied to something bigger, charging in blind ain't smart." Jack eyed him. "You getting soft on me, Reaper?" Reaper smirked. "Just thinking tactical. You taught me that." Jack didn't respond, but something in Reaper's tone left an itch he couldn't scratch. "All right," Jack said finally. "We ride out to Eastfield, but we go in quiet. No engines till we're close." The men nodded, but before they could mount up, Hawk, the club's tech guy, stepped out of the van parked nearby. His laptop glowed in the dim light. "I got something," Hawk said. "Tapped into traffic cams along Route 19. The Red Vulture's pickup was spotted leaving town about 40 minutes ago. Guess where they were heading?" "Eastfield Depot," Bear said. Hawk nodded. "Right on the money." Jack's pulse quickened. "Get us visuals." Hawk turned the laptop around. Grainy footage showed the red Ford turning off the highway toward a stretch of industrial road surrounded by scrub and rusted warehouses. The timestamp was recent. "They're there," Hawk said. Jack straightened. "Then that's where we're going." As the men began prepping their bikes, Reaper slipped around the back of the bar, pretending to check the perimeter. Out of sight, he pulled a burner phone from his vest and dialed a number he'd memorized long ago. "Sheriff," he said when the line clicked. A low voice answered, calm and deliberate. "Talk." "They're moving," Reaper said. "Rourke's heading for Eastfield Depot. He thinks Daniels is there." The sheriff grunted. "You make sure he stays off our tracks. I told you, I can't have those bikers stirring up the wrong nest." "I'm handling it," Reaper said. His tone was steady, but his jaw clenched tight. "Just remember our deal." "Keep feeding me intel," the sheriff said, "and you'll get your payout." Reaper hung up, shoving the phone deep into his pocket. For a moment, he stared at his reflection in the dusty window. His stomach twisted. He told himself he was just buying time, that he'd warn Jack before things got ugly. But lies had a way of growing teeth. Back at the bikes, Jack was tightening his gloves when a small voice spoke behind him. "You're going after them, aren't you?" Turned. Ariel stood near Bear's van, her hands folded in front of her, eyes still red from crying but determined. "You should be resting," Jack said. "I couldn't," she said. "You're going to find my mum's bag, right?" Jack nodded. "We'll find your bag. And maybe the men who took it." She hesitated. "My mum said something before she disappeared. She said if anything bad happened, I should find the men on bikes. She said they were the ones who listen." Jack felt the weight of that sentence settle in his chest. The men on bikes. Ethan had said something similar once, that not all heroes wore badges. Some just refused to look away. He crouched so they were eye level. "You did right, Ariel. You found us." Her lower lip trembled. "You'll bring her back, won't you?" Jack didn't answer right away. He saw Ethan's face in his mind, his younger brother, grinning over a notepad, fearless in a world that chewed up men like him. "I'll do everything I can," Jack said finally. "That's a promise." As they rode out of town, the highway stretched ahead like a black ribbon. The setting sun painted the sky in shades of rust and blood, and the air smelled of rain that hadn't fallen yet. Jack rode at the front, Bear beside him, Reaper a few lengths back. The rumble of their engines was steady, like the heartbeat of something ancient. The farther they got from the lights of Ravenbrook, the darker the world became. Abandoned factories rose from the fields like tombstones, their windows shattered, their walls tagged with the ghosts of forgotten words. Jack's mind wandered to the past. Ethan's final call. He could still hear his brother's voice that night, urgent, breathless. "Jack, listen to me. There's a pipeline, man. Kids disappearing across state lines. They're using truck depots, old warehouses, like the ones we used to race through as kids. This isn't street crime. It's organized. I'm close to proof." "You're poking a hornet's nest, Ethan," Jack had warned. "Walk away." "I can't. Someone has to shine a light on it. You taught me that." That was the last time they spoke. 3 days later, Ethan's car was found crushed against a guardrail, the report calling it an accident. Jack had known better. Now, hearing Ariel speak her mother's name, Kendra Brown, made all the pieces align in ways he didn't want to believe. Ethan had been working with her. She'd gone missing. And Troy Daniels, the thug who hit a child in daylight, was tied to both. This wasn't random cruelty. It was a web. And Jack had just followed the thread straight into it. They stopped at the edge of the Eastfield Industrial Park, a skeletal sprawl of rusted warehouses surrounded by overgrown weeds. "Place looks dead," Bear muttered. "Good," Jack said. "Dead means quiet." Hawk pulled up beside them in the van, laptop open again. Traffic cams end about a mile back. No movement since Troy's truck entered the area. Could be laying low. Jack nodded. "We go in on foot. Reaper, take 6 men and sweep the north side. I'll take the south with Bear and Hawk." Reaper saluted lazily. "Got it, boss." Jack grabbed his shoulder before he left. "If you see Daniels, don't engage. Call it in. We don't know what we're walking into." Reaper smirked. "Understood." But when he turned away, his face hardened. His burner phone buzzed once, a text from the sheriff. "Keep them away from Building 12. You'll be paid." Reaper swallowed hard, pocketed the phone, and kept walking. As Jack's team moved through the silent depot yard, the sound of crickets filled the air. Somewhere in the distance, a door creaked open, then slammed shut. Bear raised his rifle. "You hear that?" "Yeah," Jack said. "They're here." He crouched behind an old container, peering through the slats. Headlights glowed faintly inside one of the warehouses. Shadows moved, men carrying boxes, talking in low voices. Troy's voice echoed faintly, "Load it up. We're moving out by dawn." Jack's pulse steadied. "That's our lead," he whispered. Bear nodded. "We hitting them now?" "Not yet," Jack said. "We find out where those trucks are headed. We end this clean." But even as he spoke, something in his gut twisted, that same off-kilter instinct that had saved him in combat. Because somewhere out there, someone was watching them. At the far edge of the lot, Reaper stood in the shadows, watching Jack through the scope of his binoculars. His heart pounded as he whispered into his phone. "They're getting close," he said. The sheriff's voice came back cold and clear. "Then it's time we made sure they don't find what's ours." Reaper's hand trembled. For a split second, he thought about hanging up, about walking back to Jack and confessing everything. But the sheriff's last words rang in his head. "You chose this side a long time ago, son." Reaper closed his eyes. "Yeah," he muttered. "Guess I did." He ended the call and slid the phone away, the weight of it burning against his chest like guilt made metal. In the distance, the Iron Saint's flashlights cut through the dark. The hunt was on. And so was the betrayal. The world was gray and still when Jack Rourke crouched behind a pile of rusted barrels, watching the Eastfield depot through binoculars. Dawn crept across the sky like a bruised eyelid, soft light bleeding through low clouds, casting long shadows over cracked pavement and the skeletons of abandoned warehouses. Beside him, Bear adjusted the scope on his rifle, the metal glinting in the pale light. "Been watching for an hour," Bear muttered. "You think Troy's dumb enough to show his face again?" "He's dumb," Jack said, "but not scared. Men like him don't think the rules apply." The wind carried the smell of oil, decay, and morning rain. In the distance, a truck engine rumbled to life. Two figures stepped into view. Troy Daniels, tall and broad-shouldered, his leather jacket flapping in the breeze, and next to him, the unmistakable shape of Sheriff Clay Moran, uniform crisp, badge gleaming like a false promise. Jack's jaw clenched. "There he is." Bear lowered the scope, frowning. "Well, I'll be damned. Our friendly neighborhood lawman and a convicted felon, shaking hands in broad daylight." They both watched as the sheriff handed Troy a brown envelope. Troy opened it, thumbing through what looked like cash. The sheriff said something, and Troy nodded, gesturing toward the back of his pickup. Jack tightened his grip on the binoculars. Inside the truck bed, half covered by a tarp, was a torn, dirt-streaked backpack, small, pink, with one strap hanging loose. "Ariel's." Jack's blood went cold. "That's hers." Bear's voice dropped low. "Then we end this now." Jack exhaled slowly. "Not yet. We get proof first. Hawk's recording from the van, right?" "Yeah," Bear said. "But, boss, what if this goes south?" Jack lowered the binoculars, eyes locked on the two men in the yard. "Then we ride through hell to bring her justice." For several tense minutes, they watched Troy and the sheriff exchange words, papers, and handshakes. The wind picked up, carrying faint snippets of conversation. "Moving them tonight? No interference from my office. You'll get your cut." Every word was another nail in the coffin of Jack's patience. He could feel the heat rising in his chest, the urge to march across that yard and put an end to both of them right there. But rage without evidence was suicide, and he needed the world to see what Ravenbrook's badge was really worth. Then something shifted. The sheriff's hand brushed his radio, and he glanced toward the hills. Jack's instincts screamed a warning. "Bear," he whispered. "Down. Now." They ducked behind the barrels just as a rifle cracked. The bullet hit the concrete beside them, sending chips flying. "Sniper!" Bear barked, rolling to cover. Another shot followed, sparking off a steel drum inches from Jack's leg. "Son of a..." Jack grabbed his radio. "All units, pull back. It's a setup." From their flanks, the rest of the Iron Saints scrambled for cover. Engines roared to life as bikers peeled out of the depot's edge. Through the haze of dust and gunfire, Jack saw Troy smirking beside the sheriff, both of them retreating toward their vehicles. Moran raised his radio to his mouth. Jack couldn't hear the words, But he knew the tone, the kind that ordered men to disappear bodies and rewrite reports. Bear fired a burst from his rifle toward the sniper's nest. The shots scattered the marksman long enough for Jack to sprint for his bike. "Go! Go!" Jack shouted. Bullets followed them as they tore down the dirt road. A round punched through Bear's saddlebag, another shattered Jack's side mirror. The bikes fishtailed in the loose gravel, engines screaming as they outran the echo of gunfire. Behind them, the depot vanished in a cloud of smoke and dust. They didn't stop until they were miles away, the world blurring past in a rush of anger and adrenaline. When they finally rolled into the Iron Saints clubhouse, the mood was grim. Inside, tension hung heavier than the smell of oil and sweat. "What the hell was that, Jack?" snarled Razor, one of the younger bikers. "Cops and thugs working hand in hand, and now they know we're watching." "They already knew," Jack said, pacing near the bar. "That was a message. We just didn't know it was aimed at us." Another biker slammed his fist on the table. "We're a motorcycle club, not vigilantes. You want to take on the sheriff's office, be my guest, but don't drag the rest of us down with you." Bear stepped forward, his voice steady but sharp. "You see that girl out there? She's 12. No food, no family. Those bastards hit her like she was nothing. You telling me we just ride past and pretend it didn't happen?" Silence fell. The room's only sound was the hum of the refrigerator and the distant thunder outside. Jack stopped pacing. His voice was low but carried weight. "You're right, we're not vigilantes. We're soldiers who came home to a broken system. And when the wolves start wearing uniforms, somebody's gotta bite back." He looked each man in the eye. "We ride for her. For every kid they thought no one would care about. You don't have to stay. But if you do, you stand with me." One by one, heads nodded. The anger that had filled the room shifted into resolve. From the back corner, a small voice spoke up. "You really mean that?" Everyone turned. Ariel stood in the doorway, wearing an oversized Iron Saints jacket that nearly reached her knees. Jack blinked. "You should be resting." She shook her head. "I heard you, Uncle Jack." The word froze him mid-breath. Around the room, the bikers exchanged quiet glances. "Uncle Jack," she repeated, voice soft but sure. "You're gonna help my mum, aren't you?" Jack swallowed hard. "Yeah, good. We're gonna bring her home." As the men dispersed to prep their bikes and weapons, Hawk stayed behind at the bar, typing furiously on his laptop. The blue glow from the screen lit his face as lines of code scrolled past. "Boss," he called. "I've been working on the USB we recovered from the backup files on the diner's security drive. You're gonna want to see this." Jack leaned over his shoulder. "What did you find?" Hawk tapped a key. The screen filled with folders, each labeled with medical symbols, government stamps, and dates going back years. "Looks like medical logs," Hawk said. "Hospital records from the county facility, Kendra Brown's workplace. But that's not all." He opened another folder. Dozens of scanned photos appeared, young girls, hospital gowns, ID tags. Jack's stomach churned. "What the hell is this?" Hawk clicked one more file, a spreadsheet listing payments, names, and signatures. The header read, "Rehabilitation Transfer Program, Project Guardian." Jack scanned the names. Sheriff Clay Moran, Councilman Jeffrey Lang, Dr. Vaughn of County Medical. Each one had transaction records, large sums moved offshore, marked consultation. Bear read over Jack's shoulder. Jesus! They were trafficking patients, using hospital paperwork to move M off the grid. Hawk nodded grimly. "And guess who signed off on every transfer?" Jack's jaw locked. Sheriff Moran. He straightened, anger pulsing under his skin like electricity. "Now we know why they wanted that girl gone. Her mother had proof, and they've been cleaning house ever since. Bear exhaled. So what's the move? Jack's voice was quiet but final. We take the fight to them. No badges. No politics. Just truth. Outside, thunder rolled over the plains. The sky darkened again, heavy with rain. Ariel stood at the doorway, watching the storm gather. She clutched the edge of the jacket tighter around her shoulders, whispering to herself in that lilting Jamaican accent, "Bad men think they own the world. But sometimes, thunder come for them too." Jack heard her, just barely, and a faint smile ghosted across his lips. "Yeah," he said softly. "It's coming." The storm broke just after midnight. Rain fell in sheets, hammering the tin roof of the Iron Saints clubhouse and echoing through the wooden beams like distant gunfire. The air smelled of gasoline, sweat, and anticipation. Inside, the brothers were quiet, too quiet. Jack Rourke sat at the long oak table, the same one his late brother Ethan used to sit beside during poker nights, before journalism had pulled him into darker places. Jack's calloused hands gripped a mug of coffee gone cold. He hadn't slept. None of them had. Across the room, Hawk worked at his laptop, scrubbing the USB drive for more data. Bear checked weapons on the counter, magazines loaded, safety latches off. Ariel slept curled up on the couch, wrapped in an oversized leather jacket that dwarfed her. Every so often, she stirred and mumbled her mother's name. Jack looked over at Reaper, Cole Jensen, his sergeant-at-arms. Reaper sat near the window, his face half-shadowed by the flickering light of a neon beer sign. He looked restless, knee-bouncing, jaw tight. "You're wound up," Jack said. Reaper smirked without humor. "Hard to relax when you've got half the county wanting your head." Jack nodded slowly. "You've been jumpy all week. Something on your mind?" Reaper's gaze flicked toward him, then away. "Just tired, boss. Been a long few days." Jack studied him a moment longer, but said nothing. The silence stretched thin. Bear grunted from the bar. "Feels wrong. Too calm. After what went down at the depot, they should have hit us already." Jack was about to reply when a sudden, sharp pop cracked the air. The front window exploded inward, spraying glass across the floor. "Down!" Jack roared. The next instant, gunfire erupted, a hailstorm of bullets ripping through the walls, splintering wood, shredding the Iron Saints banner hanging above the bar. The brothers dove for cover. Hawk flipped the table for a barricade. Bear dragged Ariel behind the couch as more rounds tore through the front door. "Contact front and side." Razor yelled from the back hallway, his voice drowned by automatic fire. Jack pulled his pistol, returning fire through the shattered window. The muzzle flashes outside lit up the night. Sheriff's deputies, helmets gleaming under floodlights, advancing in formation like soldiers. Jack's stomach turned to iron. "It's a raid," he growled. Clay sent his wolves. The firefight was chaos. 2 Iron Saints went down early, Mick and Denny, cut off near the garage before they could reach their bikes. Smoke filled the room from a burning curtain, the smell of cordite thick in every breath. Reaper reloaded beside Jack, his hands trembling slightly. "We gotta get the kid out." "Back hall!" Jack shouted. "Bear, take her!" Bear scooped Ariel into his arms. She cried out as bullets tore through the drywall inches from her head. "Hang on, sweetheart," he grunted, ducking through the kitchen. Reaper fired another burst out the window, hitting a deputy's shoulder. The man fell, cursing. But the gunfire didn't stop. It intensified, tighter and more coordinated. "They know the layout," Hawk yelled. "They knew where to hit." Jack's eyes snapped to Reaper. The sergeant froze just for a fraction of a second, but it was enough. "You knew," Jack said quietly, realization dawning like a knife twisting in his gut. "They came through blind spots only you knew about." Reaper's mouth opened, But before he could speak, another round shattered the wall beside him. Jack grabbed his collar, dragging him behind cover. "You sold us out?" Reaper's face twisted with guilt, rain streaking down from the open window. "I didn't think he'd—" He stopped, voice breaking. "It wasn't supposed to be like this. He said no one would get hurt." "Sheriff Clay," Jack demanded. Reaper nodded, tears cutting tracks through the grime on his cheeks. "He owns me. My sister, she got busted with meth 2 years ago. He said he'd make it disappear if I fed him scraps. I didn't know he was gonna send a kill team." Jack stared at him, disbelief turning to rage. "You just signed our brother's death warrants." Reaper looked away, shame burning in his eyes. Before Jack could respond, Ariel screamed. Bear had been guiding her toward the back door when the wall behind them exploded, wood and plaster bursting apart as deputies breached through the side. Bear tackled Ariel to the ground, shielding her as bullets tore through the room. A figure stepped through the smoke, a deputy with cold eyes and a rifle raised. Jack saw it unfold in slow motion. Ariel crawled backward, eyes wide with terror. The rifle barrel swung toward her, and Reaper moved. He lunged from behind cover, throwing himself between the deputy and the girl. The gun went off, one deafening shot, and Reaper staggered, blood blooming across his chest. He hit the floor hard, gasping. Bear fired back, dropping the deputy. The room filled with ringing silence broken only by the hiss of rain through shattered glass. Jack ran to Reaper's side, sliding through debris. "Stay with me, man. Stay with me." Reaper coughed, blood bubbling at his lips. "Guess. This makes us even, huh?" "Shut up," Jack said, pressing his hands against the wound. "You're not dying here." Reaper's hand caught his wrist, weak but insistent. They got your brother, same way they took her mother." Jack froze. "What are you talking about?" Reaper's eyes flickered toward Ariel. "She's alive, warehouse, east of town. They're keeping her there." Rain drummed against the ruined windows. The sound of retreating engines faded into the night, the sheriff's men pulling back, leaving death in their wake. Reaper's breath grew shallow. "I didn't mean for it to go this way, boss. I swear." Jack leaned closer. "You'll tell me the rest when we get you patched up." But Reaper shook his head faintly. "No time." His fingers curled weakly around Jack's hand. "Finish it, boss." The last breath left him on a whisper. Jack sat there for a moment, motionless, as the storm outside roared louder, drowning out the grief. When the shooting stopped, the survivors gathered what was left. The clubhouse was a ruin, walls shredded, smoke curling from bullet holes, the flag of the Iron Saints hanging in tatters. Mick and Denny were gone. Reaper lay covered under a leather jacket, his patch folded neatly atop his chest. Ariel stood beside Jack, her eyes wide but dry. She was too young to cry the way grown men did. Bear's voice broke through the silence. "What now, boss?" Jack rose slowly, shoulders square, jaw set. "Now." He looked around at his brothers, bloodied, angry, alive. "Now we stop being prey." He walked to the table, picked up Reaper's fallen pistol, and slid it into his holster. Then he pulled a rag from his pocket and wiped blood from his knuckles. "They hit our home. Killed our own. Tried to take a little girl and cover their filth with badges." His voice was low, steady, dangerous. "That ends tonight." The men exchanged glances, nodding one by one. Bear cracked his neck. "Then we ride." Hawk closed his laptop, his voice grim. "I traced the last GPS ping from the USB drive, east of town. Old warehouse district by the river." Jack nodded. "That's where we'll find them." He turned to the brothers. "We go armed. We go fast. We leave no one behind." The Iron Saints moved like soldiers preparing for war. Guns were cleaned, ammo packed, engines tuned. Someone brought out the old red paint, tradition from their marine days. They dipped fingers into the bucket and dragged crimson streaks across their white skull insignias. The color bled in the rain light, fierce and alive. Ariel watched them from the doorway, clutching Reaper's dog tag in her small hand. Jack stepped beside her, resting a hand on her shoulder. "You don't have to be afraid anymore," he said. She looked up at him, eyes reflecting firelight. "You gonna get my mummy now?" Jack's voice softened. "Yeah. We're bringing her home." Then he swung a leg over his Harley, engine growling to life like a beast awakened. One by one, the others followed, a thunderstorm of chrome and fury. Jack looked back once more at the burning clubhouse, at the ghosts it now held, and muttered, "You wanted war, Clay, you just got it." As the Iron Saints rolled into the storm, their engines drowned the night. The air outside the ruined clubhouse was thick with smoke and the smell of rain-soaked ash. The Iron Saints moved through the wreckage in silence, their faces hard, their eyes cold. Every man knew what was coming. There would be no courtrooms, no second chances, and no mercy. They were done running. Inside the garage, engines hummed as they were tuned and fueled. Chrome shone under the flickering floodlights. Tools clattered against steel. The rhythmic growl of revving Harleys mixed with the low rumble of thunder rolling across the horizon. Jack Rourke stood near the center of the floor, helmet in one hand, phone in the other. His voice was low but firm. "Agent Sarah Chun?" A moment of static, then a woman's voice crackled through. "Jack Rourke, been a long time." "Too long," he said. "You were Ethan's contact at the Bureau. I think it's time we finish what he started." He sent her the encrypted file Hawk had pulled from the cracked USB drive, the documents that proved everything: trafficking ledgers, payoffs, the sheriff's involvement, and the connection between local officials and the network running across state lines. There was silence on the line as she scrolled. "Jesus Christ," she muttered. "You have any idea how deep this goes?" Jack's eyes were cold. "Deep enough that if I wait another day, that little girl's mother dies in a cage." "You know I can't sanction vigilante action, Jack. I'm not asking for permission. I'm giving you a head start." He ended the call before she could reply. Bear approached, wiping grease from his hands. "She gonna help?" "She'll move when we make noise," Jack said. "The second the feds see smoke, they'll come running." Bear gave a grim nod. "Then let's give him a show." The brothers prepared like soldiers before a final campaign. The long table that once held poker chips and whiskey bottles was now covered with maps, ammo boxes, and assault rifles. Hawk traced the location of the warehouse on an old road atlas. "East end of the river," he said. "Abandoned depot used by the Red Vultures for shipments. Thermal scans show heat signatures underground. That's where they're keeping them." Jack leaned over the map, eyes narrowing. "Tunnels?" "Likely. I'll jam their comms once we breach the perimeter, but we'll be on our own till Sarah moves in." Razor slammed a clip into his rifle. "Don't need anyone else. We got us." The room filled with quiet murmurs of agreement. Ariel sat at the corner of the table, clutching Reaper's dog tag, her small fingers tracing the etched name. Her eyes were red from crying, but her voice was steady. "I want to come too." Jack turned to her, crouching so they were eye level. "That's not happening, kid." "I can help," she said quickly. "I know what my mum looks like. What if you can't find her?" Jack shook his head. "You've done enough. You stay here with Miss Carla. She'll keep you safe." "But you said we were a family," Ariel whispered. He sighed. "Families protect each other. That's what I'm doing." Her lips quivered, but she nodded. Still, Jack saw the stubbornness in her eyes, the same fire that lived in her mother's. He knew the fight wasn't over. By dusk, The storm clouds over the plains had turned the sky into a smear of red and gray. The wind carried the distant rumble of thunder and the smell of wet earth. One by one, the Iron Saints rolled their bikes out of the garage, headlights slicing through the twilight. The last rays of the sun glinted off their steel and chrome like fire catching on a blade. Jack mounted his Harley, the same bike he'd ridden into war zones and back again. Across the fuel tank, the white skull insignia of the Saints had been painted over with streaks of crimson, the mark of vengeance. He looked out at his brothers, Bear, Hawk, Razor, and nearly 100 more, every man armed, patched, and ready. "This is for Ethan," Jack said, voice carrying over the low growl of idling engines. "For Reaper. For every one they buried, every soul they thought no one would remember." Bear raised his fist. "For real. For the lost." Engines revved in unison, a thunderous chorus shaking the ground beneath them. The convoy pulled out of the lot in formation, tires spitting gravel, engines echoing like war drums. 100 Harleys roaring down the backroads, their headlights forming a river of white fire against the encroaching night. In the back of Bear's van, a small shadow stirred. Ariel held her breath as the van hit the open road, bouncing slightly on the uneven asphalt. She peeked out from under the tarp she'd hidden beneath, heart hammering with a mix of fear and excitement. She could see the red glow of tail lights ahead, the endless line of bikes stretching toward the horizon. "I told you to stay put," she whispered to herself, but she couldn't. Not when her mother was out there. Not when men like Troy were still breathing. She clutched Reaper's tag in one hand and whispered, "Please, God, just let me see her again." The ride lasted hours, the world around them fading into a blur of cornfields, warehouses, and flickering neon. The night air stung their faces, carrying the electric scent of the coming storm. Hawk's voice crackled through the radio. "Perimeters a mile ahead. Thermal shows at least 20 hostiles inside, maybe more underground." Jack replied, "Copy. Bear, keep the van at the rear until I signal. We hit fast, no hesitation." Bear's voice came back, "You got it, boss." The bikers slowed as they approached the outskirts of the abandoned industrial zone. The sky had turned the color of gunmetal. Old silos and storage buildings loomed like ghosts, windows shattered, rust streaking down their sides. Jack held up a fist, signaling a stop. The convoy spread out, engines dropping to a low idle. "This is it," he said. "We go in quiet until we can't. Once the shooting starts, no one stops till the job's done." Razor grinned beneath his helmet. "Been waiting to hear you say that." Jack almost smiled. Almost. He keyed the radio again. "Sarah, we're moving in." Her voice came through calm but sharp. "Copy that. Federal backup is staged 30 minutes out. Make sure you're still breathing when we get there, Rourke." "No promises." He holstered his sidearm, adjusted his gloves, and took one last look at the horizon. Lightning split the sky in the distance, illuminating the landscape in blinding white. And then, as if the heavens themselves were giving the signal, the rain began to fall, cold, hard, relentless. The first drops hissed against hot engines. Thunder rolled. Jack twisted the throttle. "Let's ride." The Iron Saints surged forward into the storm, their engines roaring louder than the sky. Headlights cut through the sheets of rain, the sound of 100 machines merging into one living, breathing force of vengeance. Ariel peeked through the van's tiny window, eyes wide as she watched them disappear into the downpour. "Go get her, Uncle Jack," she whispered. Ahead of her, the warehouse district flickered with distant lightning, dark silhouettes of metal and concrete waiting for what was coming. Tonight, the Iron Saints weren't just riding. They were coming to end it. The storm hit its peak just as the Iron Saints reached the outskirts of the abandoned depot. Rain fell in torrents, hammering the cracked asphalt and bouncing off the chrome of 100 bikes. Lightning tore across the sky, turning the rusted metal skeletons of old warehouses into jagged shadows. The air smelled of oil, smoke, and something darker, anticipation. Jack Rourke raised a gloved hand, signaling a stop. His men idled their engines, the sound rolling through the storm like a growl. "This is it," he said through the radio. "Bear, you take Alpha, hit the main gate. Draw their attention. Hawk, you're with me. We're going in through the loading docks." "Copy that," Bear's voice rumbled back. "We'll make it loud." Jack took one last look down the rain-slick road. The warehouse loomed in the distance, floodlights glowing faintly behind the fence line. Beyond those walls was everything they'd fought for, the proof of corruption, the truth about Ethan's death, and maybe, just maybe, the girl's mother. He adjusted his helmet and muttered, "Time to finish this." Team Alpha moved first. The Iron Saints roared through the front gate like a wave of thunder. Bear led the charge, his Harley crashing through the chain-link fence. Sparks flew as tires skidded on wet concrete. Razor and Chains followed close behind, rifles raised. Security lights flared. Alarms screamed. Armed guards scrambled from the main building, shouting orders drowned by the roar of engines. Bear's bike fishtailed to a stop, and he opened fire on the floodlight towers, plunging half the yard into darkness. Razor tossed a smoke grenade, thick gray plumes curling through the rain. "Let's dance!" Bear bellowed, ducking behind his overturned bike as bullets pinged off the metal frame. The front of the depot erupted in chaos, exactly as planned. While the storm and gunfire masked their movements, Team Bravo moved in from the back. Jack, Hawk, and two other Saints crept along the outer wall, their boots splashing through puddles. The rain hid their silhouettes as they cut through a padlock on the loading dock. Hawk typed quickly on his wrist tablet, his voice calm despite the thunder. "I'm jamming their radios. 10 minutes tops before backup knows they're blind." "Then we make it count," Jack said. The door slid open with a metallic groan, revealing a dark corridor that smelled of rust and damp concrete. They stepped inside, flashlights cutting thin white beams through the black. Every footstep echoed. Somewhere deeper in the warehouse, muffled cries broke through the hum of machinery. Hawk froze, listening. "You hear that?" Jack nodded, hand tightening on his pistol. Voices. Women. Kids. They followed the sound down a flight of stairs and into the belly of the building. The underground chamber was worse than anything Jack had imagined. Rows of steel cages lined the walls, dozens of them. Some empty, others not. The dim light revealed terrified faces behind bars. Young women, bruised and trembling, eyes wide with disbelief. "Oh my God," Hawk whispered. Jack's gut turned to stone. "Get them out. Now." He moved quickly, smashing locks with the butt of his pistol. Hawk covered him, then spotted a terminal on a nearby desk. "Boss, you need to see this." Jack leaned over his shoulder. The screen showed ledgers, medical logs, and transaction records. Dozens of names. Dozens of children. "This is it," Hawk said. "Everything. The whole operation." Jack slid a flash drive from his vest and slammed it into the port. "Download it. All of it." The progress bar crawled across the screen as thunder shook the ceiling above. A voice suddenly cracked over the intercom, harsh, angry. "We've got company. Lock it down." Jack swore. "They know we're here." Hawk grinned tightly. "Good. Saves us the trouble of sneaking out." Gunfire erupted overhead, the echo of battle filtering down through the metal grates. The walls vibrated as grenades detonated near the main gate. Bear's voice came through Jack's radio, broken by static. "Front's heavy, boss. They're bringing trucks, 5, maybe 6. You better find what you came for fast." "Almost there," Jack said. Hold your ground. He kicked open another door, sweeping his flashlight across a small side room, and stopped cold. In the corner, slumped against a cot, was a woman. She was thin, bruised, her dark skin pale beneath the flicker of fluorescent light. Her hospital scrubs were torn and filthy, but her eyes, deep brown and defiant, snapped open when she heard him. Mrs. Brown, Jack said softly. She blinked, dazed. Who are you? I'm a friend of your daughter's. Her lips trembled. Ariel, she's alive? She's safe, Jack said, kneeling beside her. We came to bring you home. Kendra Brown let out a breath that was half sob, half relief. I thought I'd never hear her name again. Jack helped her stand, supporting her weight. Can you walk? Barely, she whispered, but I can try. But we've got one more thing to take care of, then we're getting you out. Behind them, Hawk yanked the flash drive free. Got it. Every file, every payment, every name. Move! Jack barked. They barely made it back to the main hall before the gunfire found them. Bullets slammed into the walls, concrete chips exploding in all directions. Guards poured in from the upper catwalks, shouting over the thunder. Hawk ducked behind a pillar, firing upward. Jack shoved Kendra behind a metal crate, returning fire with precise bursts. Go! Keep her down, he shouted. And then, above the gunfire, a voice screamed. Jack! His blood ran cold. He knew that voice. He turned sharply, and there she was, crawling out from behind a stack of crates, soaked and trembling, her small hands gripping Reaper's dog tag like a charm. I told you to stay in the van. Jack roared. I couldn't, she cried. I had to find her. Bullets tore through the air, sparking off steel. Jack sprinted toward her, throwing himself between her and the gunfire. The impact of bullets hitting nearby pillars sent shards of concrete slicing through the air. He grabbed her, pulling her tight against his chest. Stay down. They slid behind a forklift as Hawk shouted from the far side of the room. I've got the exit blocked. Move when I signal. Bear's voice cut through the radio again, panicked and fierce. Jack, we're losing the yard. Too many of them. Jack gritted his teeth, shielding Ariel with one arm while firing with the other. We're on our way. Lightning flashed through the shattered skylight, white and blinding. The world froze for a heartbeat, rain pouring through the opening, gun smoke curling in slow motion. In that flash, Jack saw movement at the far end of the hall. A figure stepping through the haze, calm amid the chaos. Troy Daniels. He walked forward with a pistol in hand, rain dripping from his leather jacket, a twisted grin stretching across his face. Well, look at that, he sneered. The great Jack Rourke, savior of the lost. He cocked the pistol, the sound echoing like a dare. You just rode into your grave, Rourke? Jack's jaw tightened. His voice came out low and steady. Funny, he said. That's exactly what I was going to tell you. Rain came down in sheets, blurring light and shadow into one violent canvas. The warehouse burned in the distance, smoke curling through the night like a living thing. Thunder cracked overhead, shaking the world. Jack Rourke stood beneath it all, chest heaving, blood running down his temple, eyes fixed on the man who had caused everything, Troy Daniels. They faced each other in the wrecked loading yard, the storm washing away the grime, the noise of chaos dimming to the rhythm of thunder and breath. Come on, soldier boy, Troy spat, his smirk barely visible in the rain. Let's see if all that Marine training means a damn thing when it's just you and me. Jack holstered his gun and stepped forward. You want a fair fight? He said. You got it. He dropped his rifle to the mud. Troy laughed, a sound cold and ugly. That's your first mistake. Then he lunged. They collided like freight trains. Jack's fist connected first, slamming into Troy's jaw with the kind of force that echoed over the rain. Troy staggered but didn't fall. He swung back hard, his punch cracking across Jack's ribs. Both men grunted, circling, drenched to the bone. Every move was raw, unpolished, years of rage turned into motion. Jack ducked another swing, driving his knee into Troy's gut. The gang leader doubled over but countered fast, throwing an elbow that split the skin near Jack's eye. Blood mixed with rain. Lightning lit the world in white for a single second, freezing them like statues. Two men locked in the oldest battle there is, vengeance and survival. You think this makes you a hero? Troy sneered, wiping his mouth. You're just like me. Violence is the only language you understand. Jack's voice came low, steady. Difference is, I know when to stop. Troy lunged again, grabbing a broken metal pipe from the ground. He swung. Jack blocked with his forearm, pain shooting up to his shoulder. Another swing grazed his jaw, sending stars across his vision. He stumbled back against the chain-link fence, breath ragged, muscles screaming. Troy advanced, pipe raised high. This is for Ethan, Troy snarled. You should have stayed out of it. Jack froze. What did you just say? Troy grinned through the rain. Yeah, your brother. He wouldn't shut up. Always digging where he shouldn't. I put a bullet in him myself. The world went silent. Even the storm seemed to hold its breath. Jack's expression hardened, something ancient flickering behind his eyes. He pushed off the fence and charged. The first punch broke Troy's nose. The second sent him sprawling into the mud. Jack didn't stop. He hit him again. And again. Every strike was years of grief, guilt, and rage made flesh. Troy's laughter turned to choked gasps. You can't stop all of us. Jack's voice was a growl. I don't have to. He grabbed Troy by the jacket, dragging him through the rain and up the side stairwell that led to the roof. Each step echoed like a drumbeat. At the top, the wind hit harder. The roof was slick with rain, the metal groaning beneath the weight of fire spreading below. Lightning arced across the sky, painting everything in blinding light. Troy swung again, but slower now, weaker. Jack caught his wrist, twisted, and drove his fist into his throat. Troy fell to his knees, coughing blood. Jack stood over him, chest heaving, the rain running down his face like tears. He pulled his knife free, flipping it in his hand. You killed my brother. You hurt that girl. You traffic children. Give me one reason not to end you right now. Troy spat blood and laughed through the pain. Because killing me won't change a damn thing. There'll be more. There's always more. Jack stared at him for a long moment, knife trembling in his grip. Then he exhaled slowly. No, he said. You don't get the easy way out. He threw the knife aside, grabbed Troy by the collar, and hauled him to his feet. Prison slower. You'll feel every minute. Below them, the warehouse yard erupted with flashing lights, red and blue cutting through the storm. FBI agents and tactical units swarmed the compound, taking down the remaining guards and rounding up survivors. Agent Sarah Chun stepped out of a black SUV, her jacket whipping in the wind. FBI, drop your weapons, she shouted to the few remaining hostiles. The bikers stood aside, hands raised, soaked and exhausted but unbroken. Bear leaned against his bike, blood on his arm but a grin on his face. Told you she'd come running, he muttered. Sarah's eyes swept the yard until they found Jack descending the stairwell, dragging a battered, handcuffed Troy behind him. Took you long enough, he said hoarsely. She smirked. You're lucky I like cleaning up your mess. Behind her, two agents shoved Sheriff Clay Moran and the city councilman into the mud, both men screaming protests drowned by the storm. The evidence Hawk had transmitted had hit the federal servers minutes earlier, irrefutable proof of their crimes. Clay Moran, Sarah called out, voice sharp. "You're under arrest for racketeering, human trafficking, and obstruction of justice." The sheriff glared at Jack as he was cuffed. "You think this ends with me? You don't know how far this goes." Jack stepped closer, his expression calm. "Far enough. But now everyone knows." In the chaos of the rescue, medics rushed to the underground cells. The freed victims were led out under blankets, dazed but alive. Among them was Kendra Brown, pale, weak, but standing. Ariel broke free from Hawk's grip and sprinted toward her. "Mummy!" Kendra dropped to her knees as her daughter collided with her, arms wrapping tight. She wept openly, clutching Ariel's face, kissing her forehead again and again. "Thank you, Jesus," she whispered. "Thank you for bringing her back." Jack watched from a few feet away, exhaustion etched deep into his face. For the first time in years, he felt something close to peace. Bear limped up beside him. "Hell of a night, boss." Jack nodded. "Yeah. You think it's over?" Jack looked at the horizon, where the smoke met the lightning. "No," he said, "but it's a start." By dawn, the rain had thinned to a drizzle. The warehouse still smoldered, black smoke rising against the pale sky. The FBI's floodlights cast long shadows across the wreckage. Jack stood apart from the others, leaning against his Harley. His knuckles were split, his body bruised, but his eyes were steady. Sarah Chun approached, her hair plastered to her face by the rain. She stopped beside him, hands in her pockets. "You just rewrote this town's history, Rourke," she said quietly. He gave a faint smile. "Maybe, but history has a way of repeating itself. Not if people like you keep standing in the way." He glanced at her, then at the Iron Saints regrouping near the road. Bear was wrapping his arm, Hawk was talking to the feds, and Ariel sat with her mother beneath a tarp, eating from an emergency food kit. "Yeah," Jack said softly. "Maybe there's still a few of us left." Sarah nodded once. "Get some rest. You've earned it." Jack mounted his Harley, the engine growling to life beneath him. The sound echoed through the stillness like the heartbeat of something immortal. He didn't look back as he rode away from the burning warehouse, the sunrise breaking through the storm clouds behind him. Justice had come roaring in on two wheels, and for once, it had stayed. 6 weeks later, the town of Riverside looked different. The sirens that once haunted its nights had gone quiet. The boarded windows along Main Street had been repaired, the graffiti washed clean. There was still pain here, yes, but for the first time in years, it felt like healing had a chance to begin. The morning sun hung low over the courthouse square, glinting off rows of chrome bikes parked neatly along the street. The Iron Saints Motorcycle Club, men once whispered about as outlaws, now stood shoulder to shoulder with veterans, police, and townsfolk. Leather jackets had been cleaned. Patches had been stitched and straightened. Even the rumble of their engines had softened, less war cry, more heartbeat. A small crowd gathered near the memorial fountain. Flowers and candles surrounded a new bronze plaque, freshly mounted to the stone. The inscription read, "For every child forgotten, for every brother lost." Dedicated to the victims of the Riverside trafficking case, and the men who gave their lives to end it. Jack Rourke stood before it, hands in his pockets, wind tugging at his jacket. He wasn't one for ceremonies. But this one mattered. Ariel Brown stood to his left, small but confident, her hair neatly braided and tied with a red ribbon. She wore a black Iron Saints vest that hung a little too big on her shoulders. Bear had it custom-made for her, the club's skull insignia stitched small over her heart. Beside her stood Kendra Brown, still recovering but radiant, her arm in a brace and her eyes full of quiet strength. She'd spent weeks in a federal safe house giving testimony to the FBI, her statements unraveling decades of corruption that reached far beyond Riverside. Now she was back, only for this ceremony, A brief window of peace before witness protection took her somewhere new. "Feels strange," she said softly, looking at the plaque. "All this because of one moment." Jack nodded. "Sometimes one moment's all it takes." Ariel squeezed her mother's hand. "Uncle Jack says bad people count on others doing nothing. That's why we gotta do something." Jack smiled faintly. "You remembered that, huh?" "Yeah," she said proudly. "And you did something." The mayor took the microphone, voice echoing over the square. 6 weeks ago, our town was shaken by a darkness we didn't know existed or chose not to see. But today, we stand in the light of truth and courage. We honor those who fought to bring justice when no one else would." He turned toward Jack and his crew. "To the Iron Saints, for proving that heroes don't always wear badges. Sometimes they wear leather and ride steel." The crowd applauded, hesitant at first, then louder, stronger. Even the few officers standing near the steps joined in, nodding toward the bikers. Bear grumbled under his breath, crossing his arms. "Never thought I'd see the day they clap for us instead of cuff us." Razor smirked. "Guess hell really did freeze over." Jack didn't respond. He just stared at the plaque, lost in thought. When the applause faded, Kendra stepped forward, speaking softly into the microphone. "For years, I thought silence would keep us safe. But silence only feeds the monsters. My daughter reminded me of something simple. Hope can be small, but it's stronger than fear." She turned, meeting Jack's gaze. "And sometimes hope rides in on a motorcycle." Laughter and tears rippled through the crowd. When the ceremony ended, people lingered, handshakes, photos, and quiet thanks exchanged between strangers who might never have spoken before. The Iron Saints helped fold the flags, guided the rescued survivors to their transport buses, and cleaned up the square before the storm clouds returned. Ariel ran back to Jack, holding a folded piece of paper. "They said I could draw something for the memorial." Jack knelt beside her. "What did you draw?" She unfolded it carefully. A crayon sketch of a Harley with angel wings, flying across a sky full of stars. He swallowed hard, voice rough. "That's perfect. Can you give it to them to keep?" she asked. He nodded, tucking it into his jacket pocket. "I'll make sure it stays right here." Kendra approached, eyes glistening. "We're leaving tonight," she said quietly. "New names. New lives." "I figured," Jack said. "I don't know how to thank you." "You already did," he replied. She hesitated, then embraced him. "Take care of her, even from far away." "Always." Ariel hugged him tight around the waist. "You'll visit, right?" He smiled sadly. "You'll know it's me when you hear the engines." As the sun dipped behind the courthouse dome, the Iron Saints began to mount their bikes. The low rumble of engines filled the square again. Less a roar of war this time, more a salute. Jack straddled his Harley and took a deep breath. His eyes drifted past the fading ceremony, past the crowd dispersing, to the small cemetery across the street. He revved the engine once, then rolled forward alone. Riverside Cemetery was quiet except for the rustle of trees and the whisper of the wind. The rain had left the grass dark and soft. Jack parked beside an old headstone, Ethan Rourke, 1986 to 2023. The inscription beneath it read, "He chased the truth until it caught fire." Jack crouched, brushing dirt from the name. For a long time, he didn't speak. Then he sighed and said, "We finished it, brother." His voice broke slightly. "Took longer than it should have, but we got them all. Troy, Clay, the ones behind them. They'll rot for what they did. Kendra's safe. Ariel too. She's got that same fire you had, drives people crazy, but it saves lives." He paused, glancing up at the sky turning gold at the edges. "Reaper went down fighting. He made it right before the end. I figure you'd have liked him." For a moment, he let the quiet fill in the rest of what he couldn't say. He stood, placed Ariel's crayon drawing at the base of the headstone, and gave it one last look. Rest easy, Ethan. The road's clear now. When he returned to the square, the Iron Saints were already lined up along Main Street, engines idling in rhythm. The air smelled of fuel and rain and something sacred, closure. Bear gave him a nod. "We good?" "Yeah," Jack said. "We're good." He mounted his Harley, twisting the throttle just enough to make the engine purr. The setting sun spilled across the wet pavement, turning every chrome surface to gold. As the first stars began to appear, Jack put on his helmet and looked down the open road ahead. For a brief moment, he thought of everything that had brought them here. The slap that started a storm, the brother he lost, the girl they saved, the monsters they buried. Then he smiled faintly and whispered the words that had followed him through it all. They thought no one would care about a homeless black girl. But justice rides on two wheels, and it never forgets. The Iron Saints roared to life as one. 100 engines thundered through Riverside, echoing against the hills like rolling storms. And as they disappeared down the highway into the dying light, the sound lingered, part legend, part promise, reminding the town that even in a broken world, sometimes justice still rides.
Thank you so much for staying with me till the very end of this story. I truly appreciate your time and your heart. This one was powerful, a story about pain, courage, and redemption. It reminds us that sometimes justice doesn't come from the places we expect. It comes from ordinary people who decide to stand up when it matters most. The greatest lesson here is simple but unforgettable. When cruelty strikes the innocent, silence is not an option. Kindness and courage can roar louder than hate, sometimes on two wheels, and with the strength of 100 hearts. If this story touched you, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and share it with your friends and loved ones. Every share helps us bring more of these powerful stories to light, stories that remind us that good still exists in this world. I'll be posting another story tomorrow, so make sure your notifications are on. You won't want to miss it. And before you go, please check out the previous story that's now showing on your screen. Trust me, it's one you'll remember. Until next time, this is Tales of an Observer, where truth, dignity, and courage live on through the stories we can't afford to forget.